Welcome to the Taylor Made Tasty podcast. I'm Taylor, retired serial quitter turned goal boss coach, speaker, and consultant. I believe a beautiful life starts with a beautiful mindset. Join me as we amplify confidence, resilience, and actionable tools on the road to quit quitting on you and your vision. You are worthy of your goals, so let's go get there. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Taylor Made Tasty, the podcast. I have a spicy episode for you today. And just in case you have little ears around, or maybe you normally listen to episodes at work, maybe save this one for a more private moment. It's the beginning of a new year, and we are encouraged to set goals. And although I do personally encourage goals in the more quote-unquote generic categories, I know our topic today is an important addition to your normal goal setting. We are setting goals, but making it sexy. With my guest, Danielle Savory, we are going to walk you through how to set some goals this year around pleasure and sex. Whether you are in a committed relationship, dating, single, or have no clue what you want, this episode is for you to start to set goals around exploring what pleasure means to you. A little bit about our guest. Danielle Savory is a master certified coach, speaker, podcaster, and influencer who has helped countless women transform their relationship to their sexuality and experience juicy pleasure in and out of the bedroom. Danielle weaves together her background in neuroscience, her expertise in mindfulness, and skills as a coach to help women rewire their brains and connect with their bodies in the most orgasmic way. The host of It's My Pleasure podcast, she lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband, 2 daughters, and dog Bruce. Please help me welcome Danielle to the show, and let's get into it. Hi, Danielle. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. Especially because the new year is a great time to reflect on the year past and prepare for the year to come. And a traditional way to practice this is via resolutions or a vision board, goal setting, that kind of thing. And while we may think or even hear of the most common ones surrounding money and health, have we ever thought about setting goals around our sex life? And all my goal bosses know that a goal is a mental representation of a desired outcome, and we formulate something we want and create a plan over time to get it. This same goal setting can be applied to your sex life, and setting sexual goals can be a great way to explore your sexuality, define yourself, or expand your self-pleasure. So Danielle, I would love to know if someone has never set a sex goal or even thought about setting a sex goal, can you share maybe the purpose of doing so or why goals in your sex life are so important?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's just, like you said, like our goals and the reason that we do goals is to create a desired outcome. And sex is one of those things that we don't really get intentional about. It just kind of happens or doesn't happen or it might be like sprinkled in. And that's honestly, even if you don't have a specific sex goal, and I'm sure we'll get into talking more about what those could look like, just the idea of like, I want to have great sex this year can be so transformative, just putting that intention out there and putting it on the top of your mind, because usually we don't think of pleasure or sexuality or deep connection or passion. Like I hear a lot of couples, they might put like date nights once a month on there. Well, like why are you doing a date night? Is it just to like hang out more? Like we don't really get intentional about why are we choosing to do this? Why is it important to us? And obviously I'm a sex coach, so I think that sex is really important, but just for the lay person out there that doesn't like go into the realms of pleasure and sexuality all the time, it's like, why isn't it on our list? Like, why aren't we thinking about this more? We put all these other priorities at the very forefront of our list when it's like, this is an area that not only has like far reaching health benefits, overall well being benefits that are now being proved scientifically in all sorts of realms, but it is like an opportunity for us to relate to our body in a way that feels really good and feels really nourishing and feels really pleasurable. It's an opportunity for us to slow down. It's an opportunity us for completely transform our relationship with our body, letting go of shame, letting go of preconceived notions, and experiencing it in a celebratory way. It's a way for us to connect with our partners and create great intimate connection on purpose. It's like one of those things. It's at the end of the day or at the end of your life, not to get morbid, you don't hear people like making regrets about like, what, I really wished I would have worked on blah, blah, like worked in my, made more money. Like, yes, we do want to do that. Like, I am a boss, I am a CEO, but also it's like, I wish I spent more time with my loved ones. I wish I like did take time and slow down and had some romping in the sheets a little bit more. Like those are the things, that's like the spice of life that really allows us to have important memories and important experiences and important connections with ourselves, with others. And so yeah, there's a lot of benefits, and I think that it is one of the most important things, especially as women, for those of you that are listening that are socialized as women, can be such an empowering thing and a reclamation of this part of ourselves.
I think it's become less taboo to talk about. But I definitely think that there is still some of that. And especially when it comes to the goal setting piece, is like, well, that's weird. I don't want to say, I don't feel empowered to say what I want for myself or for us as a couple or beyond that, whatever that looks like for people, right? And so I think a lot of pleasure and sex is exploratory, and we find out what we like over time or with certain people, dating, whatever that looks like. But if someone has never experienced something in the sexual realm but is curious, how would
Mhm.
you advise on goal setting around like the unknown? Maybe they don't know what to expect, what it's going to feel like, what it like I said, it's maybe taboo, whatever it is. Like, how would you start goal setting around things that feel foreign or unknown to you?
Yeah, well, I think that it's really I think this is such an interesting question because most things are unknown. I think that, whether it's like starting a new exercise routine that we've never done or starting a new like money mindset or, embarking on an entrepreneurship journey or anything like that, like there is this all of these things are very unknown, but the difference is when it comes into the sexual realm, even though it might not be taboo, we don't have as many conversations around it. And so we don't have as much representation of what it could look like or what it could be like outside of like the porn industry or something like that. So it can feel a little less safe for our bodies and a little bit more nerve wracking and a little bit scary. One of the things that I would offer to think about is maybe there is like an act, like a sexual act that you want to do or to try out. But I also like to think of sex goals as more like the way that you want to feel, right? Like if you maybe want to experience more desire for sex, like really focusing on something in the feeling realm rather than just the act realm. Not that they're doing the act is taking outside, but like, why do you want to? Is it because you want to feel adventurous? Is it because you just want to have the experience of doing something new? Is it because you're trying to like spice things up in the bedroom? Like, really get clear on your intention behind it. And then also, how are you hoping that thing is going to make you feel? And when it comes to embarking on any kind of sexual growth journey, the number one pillar I always really talk about, I have like three pillars that I talk about when it comes to pleasure. The number one is creating safety. And safety might sound like, oh, of course I'm safe, like, especially if you've been in a relationship for a long time or it's consensual. And It's kind of what I'm talking about, but it's more the feeling of safety in our body. Because even though cognitively we might know something is safe or it's not threatening, the way that your nervous system oftentimes feels is not safe, especially when we're going into something that's vulnerable, especially when we're going into a place that's unknown. So, how might I meet myself? Maybe that's putting your hand on your heart, regulating your nervous system, soothing yourself, getting out of stress, like creating a plan that if you don't like what you're doing or you're not comfortable, like what's your exit strategy? So, creating safety around how you can stop if you don't like something or how you're going to speak up or creating that safety by talking it through with your partner, any of these kind of things. But creating safety is really like the number one thing when we're doing, even if it's like the normal everyday sexual thing, or if you're trying something new. The other part about after we've created safety in our body is really helping ourselves create curiosity. Like, what is here? Because that is like the biggest killer to pleasure. But in general, when we're working on sexual growth, curiosity is what allows us to keep moving forward, even going into the unknown. Like, let's just see, or what feels good, or how do I feel about this? Like, continuously following your own path of curiosity. And then the third pillar, really to focus on, is in the possibility of pleasure. Because oftentimes, what shuts us down in our bodies is when we start having the doubts and the insecurity or the what's going wrong. It's like the spectatoring of our sex, like, oh, this isn't working how I want to, or I don't feel like I'm getting aroused, or it's not going fast enough, or what are they thinking about my boobs, or whatever it might be, right? Like, there's all these things that can go on during your head, and coming back to your body and being like, you know what? I've got this amazing body that's wired for pleasure. Let's see how I can turn it on. Let's see how to tap into it. So reminding yourself, like, pleasure is totally possible. I'm wired in my brain for it. I'm wired in my body for it. And now I'm just figuring out like how to create that pleasurable experience for myself.
Oh, I love those three pillars. Thank you for sharing that. And you had mentioned spicing things up in the bedroom. So, sort of flipping the script, we were talking about curiosity of the unknown to maybe let's talk about the person out there who is in a relationship where time has passed. Maybe some of the novelty has worn off and or just life in general gets in the way. And the thriving sex life is like inching towards non existent. So, I would love for you to share ways to goal set around that situation where you are talking about spicing things up.
Yeah, so I think the reason that I use the term spicing things up is because it's literally like the only term you ever see in magazine articles. Like, bring the spice back to your, like blah sex life. I have a little bit of a problem with that term, even though I used it because I think that it's the most relevant, only because what it indicates is that we need to do something external in order to have more pleasurable sex. And I like to think it's like you even said, Taylor, you said, like when the novelty wears off. And that's exactly what's going on. The novelty wears off. But novelty, we want to remember, happens in our mind. Novelty is not some sort of external experience. Novelty is something that we can create. And so a lot of my background has been in Buddhist training and mindfulness. And there's a term called the beginner's mind. And so it's coming back to something like you've never experienced it before. So if any of you have ever done like a mindful eating exercise, the way that you approach the raisin or whatever piece of fruit that you might like approach is like, you're an alien coming down to this planet and you've never seen it. And how does it smell? And how does it look? Well, like, approach your partner that way. Like, kiss them like it's like the first or the last time. Like, when you see, even on the movies, you see somebody that might have like a near death experience or they almost die and then they get to see their partner again. It's like the most passionate kiss. Well, that's only because they are experiencing it like, oh my gosh, I never knew I was going to get to kiss you again. Or like, here you are and I get to have this. we can do that by creating that kind of situation in our mind. And so kissing your lover like it's the first time every time, instead of assuming, oh, I know what they're going to do, we pay attention. Like, what does this feel like in my lips? Like, what other parts of my body is it lighting up? Like, where is this going to go? Ooh, they're biting my lower lip this time. That's kind of fun. That's kind of spicy. So we can bring that novelty, we can bring that spiciness in. You could be having the same quote unquote vanilla, like missionary style sex for the rest of your life, and it can continue to like blow your mind if you simply approach it this way. But if you do want to try something like external and bringing something in, you always can. Like, you can always be like, you know what? I really want to love like oral sex, whether it's receiving it or giving it, or I really want to try out this position, or I want to try having multi orgasms. I remember one of my sex goals one year was to learn how to self pleasure to the level that I really wanted to enjoy without the use of a vibrator. So for me, because I never like had really tried self-pleasure without a vibrator or without some sort of toy, like that felt very challenging. Like that felt very fun. Like, I wonder, how I'm going to experience that without some sort of external toy or vibrator or something like that. So you can like, or maybe you want to try a sex toy. Maybe you want to try doing a naked dance with your partner. Like, there's all these like little things, but it's really the thing that I want you to remember is like, you don't have to. Like, if those things feel really like nerve-wracking or scary or anything, your goal can just simply be like enjoying the sex that I'm having. It doesn't have to be some external crazy spicy position. It can just be like, I really just want to get into it. I want to enjoy it more. And then challenge yourself to experience each and every sexy session like it's the first time, like it's the last time, like you're just like just indulging and marinating and just like oodles of pleasure.
That's such a helpful perspective to have that novelty mindset, which you can bring back at any moment, really.
Yes, exactly.
And you were talking about the safety piece. I would say that a lot of that is being able to feel empowered to use your voice too. So let's say we sit down solo and we create some goals that are personal to us that we desire in our sex life this year, and that these goals involve another person. So our partner, whoever we're dating, whatever that looks like. How do you recommend going about having that conversation of saying, hey, I set some sex goals this year. And that may sound weird to them. It may sound weird to the person who created them. But, like, how would you say to go around having that conversation of, this is what I would like for our sex life this year?
Yeah, yeah, that's such a great question. The first thing that I would have you ask yourself is like, why do you want to talk to your partner about? Now, I know that kind of sounds like a out there question, like, well, of course, because they're involved. But I think that we have this notion that we need to communicate every single thing that we're doing, and we need to like be talking about every single thing that we're doing with our partner specifically. And I just want to give you permission. You don't actually have to. Now, if you want to, that's different, but you don't have to. And the reason that I wanted to bring that up and say that is because the conversation in and of itself can bring up a lot of emotions. It can make you like really nervous. It can do all of these kind of things. A lot of women that I talk to, they really want to work on their sex life, but maybe it has been kind of a point of tension in their relationship, and they don't aren't ready to have that conversation yet because they don't want to feel pressure from their partner later on, like, hey, I thought you were working on our sex life and now you don't even want to have sex. Like, what's going on? We should have it. And they don't want to have those type of experiences. So first and foremost, I want you to understand that this journey for you and exploring your sexual growth and your sexual well-being can be a solo journey, even if you're partnered, because really the tweaks and the changes that you're making inside of yourself are about you. They're about your presence. They're about you creating desire. They're about the way that you show up in the bedroom. They're the way about you using your voice. So you don't even need to say, like, hey, I might be asking you for some new stuff in the bedroom because I have this sex goal. You can just start creating the courage and the safety and the bravery to be like, hey, you know what? I've been really like curious about what it would be like to do this. Like, what do you think? And presenting it in a way that's just like, what do you think? What are your thoughts about this? Is there something that you want to try, rather than like putting a stake in the ground and being like, I have this sex goal and you're a part of it? Because that also might create pressure for your partner. So there's ways that we can, obviously, if you're having partner sex, they're going to be a part of it, but they can also be a part of it without them knowing that you have this whole like pre-planned goal setting scheduled situation, things that you're working on, and it can really just be your journey. So that's the first thing that I would have you ask is, why do you want to share it? Is it necessary? And what would this be like if you navigated this as kind of like your solo pleasure journey? That, of course, there's going to be touch points with your partner, but they don't have to know everything that you're currently working on.
I like that perspective too. Now, what about the idea of having this conversation while you're in the like heat of the moment? You know, maybe there's some foreplay happening and you're just starting to mention things that you would like or want to feel or want to do.
Yes. So this is one that I have crashed and burned on many times, and also found my way. So just first, like, give yourself permission that you're not going to nail it, no pun intended, the first time. Like, it can be like, have your bone back, like, be soft with yourself, like, be playful with this. Like, you might say it one way and it really doesn't land, and you both end up walking away, and that's okay. Like, it's like, hey, I love you. I got you. You tried something new. I'm so proud of you for speaking up. How are we going to do it differently next time? Like, we really want to remember a growth mindset and having our own back, even in this process. So, in the moment, everybody has a different type of partner, and so you're going to understand your partner perhaps a little, better obviously than I understand. But keep in mind, this is a vulnerable place for everybody. And so sometimes in the moment might not be the best time to bring something up. You can, but I do recommend sometimes creating that space outside, like, or even, a little bit after you had sex, like, oh my gosh, that was so good. I've really been thinking, I kind of want to try this. Like, what do you think? Okay, like, so can we give that a go next time? So you can bring it, in with like, I'm really enjoying what's going on and I want to try this. In the moment, we can help being like, it's just like continuing to stay in the moment in an encouraging way, right? I think that's the biggest thing that happens in partnerships is any kind of feedback can get turned around really quickly as like, I'm doing it wrong, or criticism or shame. And so we want to help create safety for ourselves and for our partners. So if we're expressing our own desires, that our partner also feels safe. Like, that's feeling so good. Stay there. Like, encourage them when there's something that you're really liking to stay with it. And like, and then if you want to try something else, like, what about this? What about this? What do you think about this? Like, this is feeling so great. Let's like change it up a little bit. So you can do it in this very loving, encouraging way versus like, whatever you're doing is not working. Please stop. This sucks. Right. So,
You kind of mentioned this early on too, but my community and the brand I've built has a foundation rooted in wellness, and I coach on wellness having a lot of different branches, including sexual health. And so for our listeners who may be single or just wanting to start exploring more self pleasure, you were talking about that a little bit earlier as part of their goals, like how would you guide them through
mhm.
the initial steps of becoming comfortable with that or having goals surrounding self pleasure?
Yeah, this is a great question. And, the thing that I love about self pleasure is I actually, partnered or not, this is where I always start with clients. And the reason is because there's so much going on during sex, like we just talked about, like communication, what the other person's feeling, what their experience is. Like we have our own spectatorship of what's going on in our body, and then we have the worry of what's going on in theirs. Being able to like own your sexual pleasure just for you, like I'm creating this pleasure for me to be enjoyed by me, is one of the most empowering things that we can do, and such a uh, like revelation in the relationship that we have with our bodies. And so, even just starting to look at this differently, this is a reason I call it self pleasure and not masturbation, because masturbation has a lot of negative connotations. It's usually only, it's orgasm focused, where self pleasure could be more exploratory. It doesn't even have to involve the genitals. So, depending on where you're at, like really thinking of this is my chance to like enjoy my body, to show my body how much I adore it, to allow my body to show me back what it's capable of. Like this beautiful connection of like you are the giver and you're the receiver. And so when you get into this beautiful dance with your body of being the giver and the receiver, a lot of times it helps eliminate the societal shame that's been placed upon us by touching our own bodies in enjoyment. So I would just start with like, what am I starting with? Like, where is my mindset right now around it? What did I grow up with? What am I still currently thinking? Why am I feeling embarrassed around this? And it's like, that's exactly what I do in my coaching programs, is we really take a look at like what are the things that are blocking us from being able to connect to our bodies in this way. Most all of them are societal messages, and when we start to reprogram those, but just remember, like, this is your body. You can create pleasure to be enjoyed by you. The pleasure is not just for somebody else's enjoyment. Your body is not just here for someone else's enjoyment, someone else is being an object of pleasure. It is for you. And when we start with the sensuality of it, just opening up the senses and how much pleasure can be felt in the senses, whether it's something you smell or just like touching your skin and putting your lotion on and being really present for that in the morning, that's the best way to start. So it's like really starting with sensuality versus sexuality. And that will allow you to start creating that reciprocal relationship with your body. And then as you continue to grow more in and more comfortable with it, you can start introducing more of the erotic nature of it.
Beautiful. Yes, I love that. It's like all encompassing, and talking about all the various sides of it, which has to do with this entire subject, I think. So that's so good. And we've discussed a lot of different scenarios today. So we've talked about being with a partner, not being with a partner, sexuality, sensuality, all of that, right? And I think for someone that's coming, I always try to think in the podcast like this, the newbie, right? The beginner, the just coming into this space. And so I would love for you to, if there was like a simple checklist, or these are the two things I would do, or something along those lines, for listeners that are just starting to create goals around their sex life.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is decide it matters. Like, I know that sounds very simple, but everybody, it's like, even if it might be more passive, like, decide this matters. Like, write it down in a journal. You know what? My pleasure does matter. Having this kind of relationship with my body matters. Like, I am wired to experience pleasure, and I can't wait to find the ways that I can experience pleasure in my body, So, decide it matters. Like that decision is very powerful when you go throughout the year. And then the second thing that I would do is start to just like gather ideas, maybe go back and listen to this podcast, even Google, what are some benefits of orgasms? What are some benefits of me being in my body and having this connection? How does it benefit my life at large? Like think outside of the box. Like, why does this matter? Like decide it matters and then ask your brain and prompt your brain, why. How would this benefit my career if I felt more pleasured? How would it benefit me speaking up more confidently? How would it benefit me as a mom or a sister or a wife or a partner, right? Like think about your relationships. If you were fully pleasured and fueled, how would that benefit the rest of your life? And then I would just decide on maybe it's like something simple once a week. Like once a week, I am going to create a meeting spot on my calendar to meet my pleasure, to experience my pleasure, to do some kind of pleasure practice, whether that's self pleasure or like a guided sensual practice, or maybe it's sexy time with your partner. Put it on your calendar once a week that you're going to do this. And if something comes up, then put it on a different day, right? Like really allow this like once a week pleasure session to be non-negotiable.
All right, 1, 2, 3. We got our marching orders for this. So you
Yes.
had mentioned that you have a coaching program. So I would love for you to share about your business and how listeners can connect with you.
Yeah. So I have a course called Undressed, and it's really a lot of the things that we're talking about. It is, a course that's like with I don't know, a plethora of guided practices, meditations, videos where we really get into talking about the mindset behind owning our sexuality, owning our body, creating a completely different relationship with our bodies so that we can show up in a pleasing way with it. So, Undressed is the main course, especially if you're new for this, that I would recommend. You can connect with me on my website, daniellesavory.com. If you're looking for the Undressed course, it's just /undressed. I also have a podcast called It's My Pleasure. So, we're talking a lot about pleasure, and that's what this podcast is about. It goes beyond just sexual pleasure, but all the ways that women have specifically been socialized to kind of cut off from the pleasures in our life and how to reclaim it and create more time and space for it.
Beautiful. Well, I enjoyed this conversation so much about goal setting, but make it sexy. Uh,
Yes.
so I appreciate you being here, Danielle, and your perspective and all the coaching you did for us today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
All right, y'all. It is time for the quote of the episode. This quote is from Alexandra Kollontai. Sexuality is a human instinct, as natural as hunger or thirst. Take that into your week, your month, or maybe even your year, and explore some goal setting around your sexuality. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in my community. I'm so glad you showed up today, and let's go get there. Look at you, crushing it. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Tailor Made Tasty podcast. My hope is you always leave with a takeaway to implement in your own goal-crushing journey. I would love if you could take a moment to leave a review. And if you're looking for a community of goal boss badasses just like you, be sure to check out tailormadetasty.com/membership.